Kremlin claims no preconditions for ending the Ukraine war, attack on Druzhba pipeline in Bryansk region, and how US to provide Ukraine with $15 billion from frozen Russian assets. We'll talk about this with Michael Sheitelman, a political strategist based in Kyiv. Michael, glad to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Arkham.
Michael, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia sees no prerequisites for ending the war in Ukraine. Peskov said, quote, "There are no signs of the Ukrainian conflict ending, as Peskov said, or any phase of it concluding, despite online reports of historic meetings and the end of the hot phase of the war." Peskov added on December 30th that Putin had no international meetings scheduled for Monday. What do you think in general about online reports of historic meetings and the end of the hot phase of the war?
Yeah, interesting that this statement of Mr. Peskov started from a statement of Ukrainian journalist Dmitro Gordon, reported from Washington that he knows exactly, he said that this is 95% that war will stop today on December 13th, at least the hot phase of the war. And after this, the rumors started going more and more and widespread, because each fact which we just meet in our everyday life, people in internet, in Telegram channels, they started to add this fact to statement of this very popular Ukrainian journalist. And the facts there, for example, Mr. Zelensky, in his daily speech, said that tomorrow it was December 13th exactly, US will make a great pace towards Ukrainian security and Ukrainian defense. And everybody thought, oh wow, it will be a ceasefire or something like that, but not. It was about the huge package, aid package with $2.5 billion, which really today President Biden proclaimed, yes. And another fact was, for example, that Russian plane, which is owned by Putin administration, this is official plane for official delegations, flew from Russia to US to Washington and stayed a couple of days in Washington. So, everybody decided, wow, this is the official delegation, and they start negotiation in White House or something. But I follow after these planes during all the war, and believe me, it is not the first flight and not the 10th flight, rather 20th or something like that. Also, last days in Kyiv and in Ukraine, there were less bombs, less Russian missiles, and less Russian drones. But also they do it in waves, and usually they try to collect more and more drones and drones and missiles for some celebrations or for some festivals. And I believe that they will strike again on New Year, like they did the previous two New Year's festivals, and they prepared huge strikes. So obviously all of these rumors, in fact, they didn't have any basement, just any basement, except of this statement of a very popular Ukrainian journalist. And this is good that this journalist is so influential in Moscow also. Is so influential on Kremlin, that Kremlin should react on this statement. We usually don't react for very important facts. For example, last week when Russian missile shot down civil plane, Azerbaijani plane, civil Azeri plane, then Mr. Peskov said that he didn't know anything and he didn't have nothing to say. But now, when we heard the statement of Ukrainian journalist, Mr. Peskov had a great speech about that.
Michael, Gordon said that he would address the audience at 21 p.m. I wonder what to expect. So we're waiting for this. It will be very interesting. And about another news, the Druzhba oil pipeline was attacked in the village of Mamai, Bryansk region of Russia. The blow partially destroyed a technical building according to the Russian Telegram channel Mesh. The strike was carried out allegedly by a Peklo drone missile, according to the Russians. Considering that this section of the pipeline is the last pumping point before the border, and from there oil goes to Europe in particular, what will the consequences be for Europe and for Russia?
The oil goes to Belarus from this point, and afterwards from Belarus to Europe, really, yeah. It looks like the attempt, it looks like very realistic, first of all, this report, I mean, because obviously this pipeline, this is oil pipeline, it is the next target for Ukrainian army. As we remember, in 2022, in the autumn of 2022, some people, we can't say it was Ukrainian army or Ukrainian intelligence services because nobody knows, but some people explode the Russian gas pipeline in Baltic Sea, Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2. So the Druzhba, which is the oil pipeline, it is the next in the queue, and it is the next critical pipeline, and Russia receives a lot of money for this oil. So if countries like Slovakia and Hungary who received the oil from this pipeline, they didn't stop to buy this oil. So obviously the only way to stop this deal and the only way to stop these revenues to Russian budget, to Russian military budget, is to bomb these pipelines. By the way, Russians, they bomb our pipelines, I mean the pipelines which works inside Ukraine, gas pipelines. So Ukraine bomb, as the answer, Russian pipelines. So it is rather very good news that this is a chance to stop Russian Russian export of oil.
Michael, production at Russian oil refineries and oil production fell to their lowest levels in more than 10 years. The reason for the decline to 20-year low was unscheduled repairs and reduction in margin due to the Russian government's attempts to curb the rise in fuel prices for households, or something else? How do you think?
I believe that there is two reasons. One is the actions of Ukrainian army again, of Ukrainian missiles and Ukrainian drones. For example, just last month, Ukrainian drones, in fact, stopped production in the biggest oil refinery in Southern Europe, I mean Rostov oil refinery, and it was struck again. I believe that there were something like 5 different strikes on this oil refinery, and now it's stopped, absolutely stopped. And it is state-owned by Russian Federation. But it gives maybe 5% of decline, maybe. And other reason to decline the production is the very limited possibilities to sell the product. Because a lot of refineries were located in the European part of Russian Federation, but in Europe it is almost banned. I mean almost, because there are some couple of exceptions for a couple of countries, but generally it is banned to buy oil refinery products from Russian Federation. So the only customers were in Asia. But in Asia, Russia doesn't have a lot of refineries. And refineries from Asian part of Russian Federation, they sell it towards China and India. But in Europe, they have a very big problem to find any buyer because the logistic is very expensive. They also can't bring it through Baltic Sea to some, for example, Mediterranean countries, but there is also big limits on Russian tankers, which is also under sanctions, and all the Russian fleet of tankers under European sanctions, so we can't bring it towards Europe.
Michael, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has announced that Russia will lift its moratorium on deploying medium and short-range missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Reported by Radio Liberty, citing Lavrov in an interview with Kremlin-aligned Russian news agency RIA Novosti. If we're talking about details, Lavrov attributed this decision to the deployment of similar weapons by the United States of America. What threats does this pose?
No, it doesn't part of our war against Russian Federation, Ukraine-Russian Federation. It is the part of general Cold War between U.S. and the Western world and Russian Federation, because we don't have any nuclear weapon. So by all the international laws, by all the international agreements, and by the UN, including the agreements which was approved by United Nations, it is banned for Russian Federation to not only to use nuclear weapon against Ukraine, but also to aim Russian missiles, nuclear missiles, to Ukrainian territory. It is absolutely banned. We know that they do that, but it is banned by the international law. So then Mr. Lavrov says something like that. This is care of White House, not of Ukrainian government, obviously. And obviously it is one more step towards the very, very Cold War, let's say, towards the heydays, back to heydays of Cold War. And on the heydays of Cold War in late 80s, I mean the previous century, before Mr. Gorbachev became to be the Soviet leader, there were a lot of missiles from this type, also in Europe, in Germany, in Western Germany. It was missiles Pershing and Pershing II, and in Russian Federation. But it was destroyed in a couple of agreements between US and Russia. But now we are back to the 80s, and we remember that in 80s, you know, that just yesterday, former president of US, Mr. Johnny Carter, has died. And I remember these days in 1980, then Jimmy Carter lost his election to Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan stopped Soviet aggression and destroyed Soviet Union. So I believe that next US president could destroy Russian Federation, and it will be the good news.
Also believe, Michael, and not only about missiles, but also about Russian army, because the Russian authorities have decided to write off loans of those willing to sign a contract. The Russian army will be replenished at the expense of bank debtors, the UK Ministry of Defense informs. Will this stimulus be effective? How this way can replenish troops, Russian troops?
Well, it is a very dangerous decision for Russian economy, because till now they paid a lot of money for people who signed contracts with Russian army. Yeah, that's true. But this lot of money, it was between $20,000 and $30,000. $20,000 till $30,000 for once person signs this agreement with Russian army. But now they are ready also to repay the debts of this person, and the limit of this debt is 10 million ruble, which means about $100,000. So now each new soldier, newbie of Russian army, will cost to Russian budget, military budget, $100,000, which is a huge amount, not only in Russia, but this is a huge amount. So the spending of new soldiers could double or triple comparing to the previous period. But why we make so dangerous decision? Because obviously we don't have enough people who are ready to sign with the previous sum, let's say. So I believe that it will bring less soldiers than economic problems, and Russia has a lot of economic problems this year and obviously next year.
Michael, you remembered about $2.5 billion for Ukraine, and also the United States will provide Ukraine with $15 billion. These funds will be secured by future revenues from frozen Russian assets, according to Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. He also said that the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine and the World Bank had signed an agreement to use this amount as part of the Peace in Ukraine project. What's your reaction to to provide Ukraine with $15 billion from frozen Russian assets right now?
No, this is great, but this is not exactly news. This is just the formal agreement, because the decision was made first of all on June meeting in Italy of J7. Then they decided that they will provide Ukraine with help of $50 billion or euro, I don't remember exactly, and they divided this sum between European Union, US, and Japan. Japan will provide $3 billion, US $20 billion, so $27 billion will be provided by European Union. And all of these on the amount of Russian frozen actives. But the decision about this $20 billion was made by Mr. Biden about a month ago, and it was final decision. And first 1 billion our budget received last week. So what is the news about this 15 billion is that there was signed something like frame agreement between Ukraine on one side and World Bank and US government. So US government doesn't give the money directly to Ukraine. US government give a loan to World Bank give a loan to Ukraine, and World Bank will receive it back not from Ukraine but from Russian actives. So what we had now, it is just a technical step. The political step was made about a month ago.
Michael, also about threat for Europe, because I see a message that Baltic states are currently not at risk of a full-scale Russian invasion, full-scale Russian attack, stated Latvian National Armed Forces commander, according to Delphi. And according to him, Russia is involved in the war in Ukraine and suffering significant losses. However, he noted that Russia, as a terrorist state, remains capable of conducting sabotage or localized small-scale operations. And he said that if we consider a much broader scenario, such as a total attack on Latvia or the Baltic states, that is entirely out of the question. But what do you think about this for European country?
Well, in Baltic states, every child knows that Baltic states, they are next Russian target after Ukraine. And they know that if Ukraine were lost the war, in 2 years ago, so till now Russians will attack also Baltic states. But the good news for Baltic states that during these 3 years, which we have a Russian-Ukrainian war, the security of Baltic states improved, very improved, mostly because of Sweden and Finland joined NATO, and Sweden and Finland, they de facto is this is the part of defense system of all the northern region, and we're big countries and very rich countries and countries with strong armies, and only Sweden is twice greater than all 3 Baltic states. And also now all the Baltic Sea is controlled by NATO, both by Sweden, Denmark, Finland and Baltic states, and Germany and Poland. So the most dangerous was exactly Baltic Sea, because Russians, they could start their attack by the Baltic Sea with Baltic Navy. They have 2 harbors of Baltic Navy in Kaliningrad district and in St. Petersburg district, and it was very dangerous. But now it looks like, this is still dangerous, obviously, but now Baltic states, they have a chance for defense in this war, in this potential war against Russian Federation. But we should remember that this is very realistic, and I remember then Mr. Biden in one of his speeches, when he compared Mr. Putin with Hamas, terroristic organization of Hamas, he also mentioned that the very close friends of Mr. Putin and very close colleague, the former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, said that their next target is Baltic Baltic States. So this is official information. This is not just rumors or something.
Michael, thank you for this conversation as always. Thank you for your attention and also thank you for your thoughts. Interesting. I need to say that Michael Sheitelman, a political strategist based in Kyiv, was with us today. I wish you all the best in New Year, and also we wish our audience all the best and see you.
Well, happy New Year and happy Hanukkah also for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.